Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another video from the Unfiltered Historian. And tonight's a little different. We're going to debut another new feature to our page here. We are actually interviewing hometown history, and we are very excited to have you guys on. How are y'all doing?
Thanks, Tyler. Yeah. We're happy to be here talking to you. This is fun.
Yeah, this is going to be a great time. So what we want to do now is we want to really highlight some other history organizations that are out there and, just spreading the gospel of history, if you will. It's what we hear from a lot of these organizations, that are a lot of people that go out and take their time. A lot of us have day jobs, a lot of us have other jobs, but there's a hobby that we have where we love to share history, whether it be hometown, Civil War, World War II, the list goes on. But we want to really just focus on, some of these really great organizations that are out there, and I have watched quite a few of the videos y'all have done. One of those, the schoolhouse video, I really enjoyed that, and after seeing that, I'm like, God, I gotta have these guys on and talk to them about this, because that's just so unique. Yeah, absolutely. So to start out, I talk a lot anyways, so I'm gonna keep my mouth shut and let you guys really take the floor here. Of course, I have some questions I'd love to field and just really kind of dive into what you guys do. But first and foremost, tell us a little about yourself, introduce yourselves, and let us know what hometown history really is.
You sure. First. Yeah. So my name's Jamie Kinsley. Dami and I are neighbors. We both live in Newberrytown. And so it was last summer, a mutual friend of ours, Jim Mcclure, got us together and said, well, actually, he messaged me and said, hey, there's this woman in Newberrytown killing it in the history department. Yeah. She has this Facebook group called Preserving the History of Newberrytown. Mm-hmm. She's got how many members do you have?
Right now, I'm almost at 3,500. More people
that actually live here.
No, that many people don't live here. So,
and it was out of nowhere. So we met at Maple Donuts and hit it off. And so we said, why don't we start doing local history videos?
Yeah.
And so that was last summer. We have now started season 2. We had 6 episodes in the fall. We just started coming up into our spring season. We're hoping to do 12 this year, 1 a month. Cool. But it's really just 2 young women talking about history and stories and making it accessible to more people.
Yeah. And we had chemistry right away. Just meeting at Maple Donuts, we really hit it off. And then Jamie invited me down the street to her house. And we met and we chatted for maybe an hour that day. And then we went straight into our first video in season 1. Yeah. So it's been really organic. Yeah.
And you guys do a lot of your events in person too, from what I've seen too. I mean, there are a few you guys have done maybe behind the camera and then some in person, or has this really started out as more of an in-person type function?
Well, we weren't really sure if we could pull an audience because we're new to this. And it was, a really fly by night situation at first. So we talked to local people and we said, hey, if you have a property that's relevant to the topic we're going to be talking about, would you let us film there? And a really nice family has a historic farm in the area. And they said, come sit in front of our historic barn and film your first episode. So it went from
that's cool.
Yeah. And that's what made it so great. So our first episode was all about the Underground Railroad in York County. A lot of people think of the South, but in York County, we had the Underground Railroad. And what's really interesting is that in the 1860s, we had a free Black family that owned a farm, and they hosted Harriet Tubman when she was coming through. And so... Right? York County. We have history.
And not only York County, but Newberry Township, which no one outside of Newberry Township knows that this exists.
Yeah, it's a really cool place. Yeah. So then it was just outside their house, outside their barn. And it was it was fun. It was clunky,
it was 90 degrees. We were sweating,
matting our faces.
Yeah. Because we just never did it before. We weren't sure how it was going to be received. Yeah. And we weren't even sure, we didn't want it to be too scripted. We didn't want it to be too casual. Yeah. We wanted to come across like we know what we were doing and that we're professionals, but we wanted it to be accessible too. Yeah. And I think we pulled it off because we're in season 2 now.
Yeah.
And a lot of people in the area didn't know anything about Newberry Township's role in the Underground Railroad, because even though we did have this free Black family helping people escape from slavery, there was a farm down the street, unfortunately, that had a family that was notable for taking a freed Black man and taking him back to Maryland and helping him go back to bondage.
And that's one thing that Dami and I try to do in our stories. So, like, for example, our next story is all about trauma and war in the workplace. And so we looked at soldiers who experienced Civil War trauma and then World War II trauma. And then one specific man named Earl Schaefer, who was the first man to hike the Appalachian Trail through hike. Again, York County, awesome. But we talk about like serious stuff in a way that the average person can listen. It doesn't feel like we're preaching at them. We really don't have an agenda. We just tell what happened. But we don't shy away from the tough stories, like mental health and race and gender. Things are important. But we also, though, try to make it so it's more of like a story, so people actually enjoy listening to us. So we don't sugarcoat things, but we try to find the positives.
Yeah. And then, that's really interesting that you bring that up. The wartime focus in Fredericksburg too. A lot of this, this is an industrial city at the time of the war too. So that's really cool that you guys are talking about that. We have a very similar situation here in Fredericksburg during the battle. For example, there's a Herkamp tannery with a gentleman by the name of George Herkamp. He owns a tannery here. He goes back to find his house completely shelled to pieces. And unfortunately, the ravages of war take place in Fredericksburg. And most of the businesses, buildings, industrialist centers here are just completely destroyed by the battle. So I can only understand just what other towns had to go through when it came to the wars and throughout history. Even Fredericksburg, we have quite a bit of other aspects of like World War One. There was at the time 1917, 1918, there was a doctor who actually owned some property here, and he's buried in our national cemetery. He's one of the few Black World War One burials here in Fredericksburg that we have. Who also in the South and 1900s, it was very rare to find a Black doctor who owned a lot of property and in turn practiced in town. So, I can only again imagine just some of the stories that are coming out from other townships and areas that have suffered through stuff of that nature.
Yeah. And I think, some people ask us like, what's new that you're coming up with? And what we're doing is we're stringing together stories that happened. But I think what makes our presentation unique, and it sounds like Tyler, you're in the same boat, is that it's more about like, what's the meaning behind this? Like, how can we celebrate this and talk about how it impacts us today, and talk about how people today can still find medicine as a form of an occupation that they can support themselves in, or like about how mental health was an issue after war. We didn't talk about Civil War shell shock. Was it called after Civil War?
Oh, I don't even think they had the term shell shock in the Civil War. That was more
of a
term. It was just,
I forget it was called something.
Yeah, but it wasn't anything like we consider it today. There was no understanding. It was just, okay, you went away to war and now you
get over it.
Came back. Yeah, and you might be traumatized, but that's just how war is. Get on with your life.
Yeah.
They didn't talk about it, and they didn't swap war stories in a therapeutic way back then. If you were a Civil War soldier and you went through a major battle, and if you were lucky enough to survive, you wrote a book about it. And a lot of times you heavily embellished, but that was how you made your money after the war. So you sort of monetized on your own trauma.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
So which sort of re-traumatizes you all over again.
Yeah.
So it definitely wasn't, they weren't sharing it in a therapeutic way, because we filmed that episode at the local VFW. And our local VFW has a veterans corner that they call it. And it's like a local newsletter that they put out. And in that, they always advertise that there's support groups for veterans.
Good.
There's like therapy, there's housing support for veterans. So times have changed so much since the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, World War I, World War II.
So we're normalizing these topics.
Yeah. And that's, I don't know if you guys have seen, there's a new book out that's about mental illness in the Civil War that I've really wanted to get my hands on. It came out, I think, earlier this year. But I mean, talking about this, that just reminded me that I need to go on Amazon and check that out soon as I've seen it on there. But it's really interesting to have this as a focus of a topic nowadays, too. And it's cool to see other organizations really trying to hone in on that, because it definitely needs to be talked about, because it's something that really affected these men. And, like you said, there wasn't really a term or even a focus on these soldiers coming back from such a traumatic experience and addressing what they may have been through. It was, dude, tough it up. You went through war. You kind of, we all did it. So what? But it's not a so what. I mean, this is a very traumatic experience to go marching in with your brother and having them killed in front of you, or a friend that you grew up with. And again, Civil War, we're talking localized areas where it's a community marching together, and then coming home to that community virtually being wiped out. There is absolutely some underlying trauma there. And I think it's really cool to highlight that and to see, again, other people really trying to focus on that and bring those stories out. It does a big service to the people that served in these wars, whatever war it may have been.
Yeah, absolutely. And we didn't talk just about the soldiers. We talked about the women that were left behind, and they had their farms ransacked by Confederate soldiers. York was a hotbed for Confederate soldiers marching up through to the Gettysburg campaign. So that was also something we highlighted on that. War doesn't only affect the soldier, it affects the civilian as well. And what it's like to be left behind and having to tend your farm, or even if it was a wife from World War I or World War II, and they were home and they had to raise their kids on their own and go into factory work when they were usually just a homemaker. So that's trauma in and of itself, and not knowing if your spouse or your father is going to come home and be able to support the family.
That uncertainty.
Yeah. So there's layers to it, and it wasn't just for soldiers that had to go through trauma and PTSD.
Right.
And I think what we're doing, and same with you, Tyler, is we're trying to talk about the everyday person. Like, of course, we'll highlight heroes and big things that happened, but it's also just like, what was it like to be alive in 1900 in York County? Where did people work? Where did they go to school? Where did they go to church? Because the ordinary person isn't talked about enough, but that's how our kids can relate, because we're trying to get the next gen into it, people in their 30s, 40s, and 20s below. And people, my kids, I teach high school for a living, and our kids are like, well, how does this impact me? I was like, well, let's talk about it. It absolutely impacts you.
Yeah, it does. And it's a lasting impact too. I mean, we're generations, beyond some of those wars as well. And it's still today, something that's brought up in almost, I wouldn't say casual conversation, but it's brought up often. And, to have a place for them to hear this, or even like begin to understand those stories, is just, I think, very important. So, props to you guys for keeping this alive and keeping these conversations going.
Yeah.
So another thing, and we kind of talked about a little bit how you guys got started with it, but are there any goals you have with Hometown History in specific to, York County and the areas around there? Do you guys have any long-term goals, maybe short-term goals with this?
We should start our own TV show hosted by MTV. Young historians talking about, I don't know about, I mean, we our goals are that we kind of take it, so we have a yearly goal where we decided that every month we're going to present, and then we're going to check in with ourselves, because like you, this is our hobby, and we know we never want it to feel like a job. So right now we're just really enjoying it. And also hopefully people who are watching, when they comment back, it's just not that we need validation, but it's so nice to see people watching us and commenting. So just that interaction and making an impact is satisfying for us.
Yeah, and I think just getting local people interested in local history is one of the main things, because we are in what I would consider a pretty small town, in a pretty small county, in a smaller state. So it's nice to be able to highlight our history and maybe get it out to people that aren't necessarily Pennsylvania local, York County local. We also, with Jamie being a school teacher, we want to impact kids in the high school and the middle school age groups, and we want them to be interested in their own local history and spark conversations.
And provide resources to teachers or homeschool kids so they can go and watch. Even like, Dami posts, she's our like Facebook guru. She's definitely that.
I'm always on social media.
She's great with that and socializing. So on Thanksgiving, she posted a 5-minute video that was just like, hey, are you hanging out with your family? Like watch this minute true and false video, because then people are having these conversations together as a family, which then again creates collaboration and unity and just communication. So, I mean, every view is a win for us.
Yeah. And I just want people to talk about it with each other. I want people to watch our videos and then go like, hey mom, like, here's what I learned. Did you know this about York County? Like a lot of people, hey, did you know Harriet Tubman was here? No, like
I didn't know that. Y'all just like blew my mind with that earlier. I was like, whoa, what?
Because then, it highlights that our area does have history worth preserving. And that's my personal goal. Outside of Hometown History, I have my own Facebook group, Preserving the History of Newburytown. And it's super self-explanatory. I want to preserve history for generations to come. So whether that means putting things on the historical register or just literally passing down family histories and family stories, because in a generation or two, it's going to be lost. The people that knew Harriet Tubman are no longer alive. The firsthand experience. So if they didn't write it down, if they didn't share that in an oral history, we wouldn't know that happened. So it's really important, even if it is just through a social media group or a YouTube video, we're getting our own slice of history and
building our archives.
Yeah, basically. And that's like the modern way to build an archive. An archive doesn't have to be an old book. It can be a YouTube video where two women who are passionate about history teach you something new.
Right. And I think that's cool too. I mean, as much as we love old books, I mean, as historians, it's kind of our favorite thing there. But it's something that I've realized too is that yes, like we have these assets like YouTube, and even these Restream or Facebook. There's a lot of stuff coming out of that. Like, and one thing that was brought to my attention when I was working on the Hill for a little bit was that a lot of the politicians and people who use Twitter, they don't realize that they're leaving us a great record of what's happening with their own actions. Even sometimes I'm just like, keep tweeting, because this is just straight up primary source material for me later on in life. And of course, I'm not flipping through a hardcover book when I'm on Twitter or YouTube or any of this. So it's really cool that you guys bring that up as well, because I've thought that for a while. I'm just like, wow, this, the digital footprint people are leaving with a lot of their posts or whatever, that's going to be just a wealth of archival information later and primary sources for us. So it's really cool to see how we use the digital field as we go forward as historians and, the next generation, that we're going to be known for talking on camera and talking, especially during the pandemic, we didn't get to have a lot of in-person events. And I'm really happy that you guys had that opportunity, because I had to reformat everything. Like, I was ready to go live and then boom, here comes the pandemic. I'm like, whoa, how do we fix this? Like, what do I do? And that's what led to, starting the Zooms and Twitch and YouTube and, so on and so forth. Seems like you guys have been able to hone your craft though with the live as well, like in person.
That's been tough because it's another layer, because you have to consider, like, for example, our first one was at a Blue Sky Tavern, which is just a local place. And Eric is the owner, and they are amazing. And he just said, you open up, whatever you need is there, grab whatever you need. But we ended up realizing that we had to have Everbright tickets. So we don't sell. We do this again, like all for free. We're just doing it. But we have Everbright tickets because we want to make sure that 50 people, as much as we'd love them to storm down the building, like we have not that happens. I wish it did.
Only hold 40 people.
And also like things you don't think of, like the waitress or waiter coming around and the background noise. So I encourage anybody who's listening to this, is interested to go live, to do your research, to go to the event, to check it out, make sure that your technology works. We were at one point in a cemetery for our episode 4 we did Hill to Die On, and we talked about 3 different cemeteries in New York: Prospect Hill, Lebanon, and then a city cemetery, which is like a potter's field. And we thought it'd be cool to go to a local cemetery, and like the Wi-Fi was glitching out.
Yeah, there's no Wi-Fi in Quaker cemeteries.
Darn them! We should run
right. You would think they'd have a hotspot or something. I mean,
and then we also had to deal. It wasn't just the Wi-Fi, but it was the sun going down and moving, and because there's trees there, and it was like all of a sudden we're in a cemetery in a shadow. Like, how creepy is that?
Sure.
So it's been fun because luckily we have an extremely competent team, and everyone's willing to pull their own weight and problem solve, and we're just having fun. So when are you thinking of going live? Do you see that in your future?
Very soon, actually. So I made some friends over here at one of our local pubs, and I know I'm going to have my first in-person event as the Unfiltered historian with the Tattooed historian. We're kind of doing a WTF Moments of History at the Gary Owen in Gettysburg, which I'm really excited for because that's one of my favorite places to go, to begin with. Yeah. So I'm going to do that first. I mean, I'm having a few moments of just myself speaking around roundtables. I'm going to Columbus, Ohio, in July, and then England next year. But I want to do something. Yeah, it's going to be, I'm beyond excited. I have the luxury of having a co-host that lives in London. He reached out and was like, hey, there's this guy, Tyler, that wants to speak. So they asked me to come to the London Civil War Roundtable. So I'm working out that as well. But it's,
I love that there's a London Civil War
Roundtable.
Do you know there's a whole organization for getting gravestones for, again, I didn't know this until he brought this to my attention. There are a significant number of Civil War veterans who ended up in the UK.
Okay. Yeah.
And there's a whole organization that just started about getting them the recognition and headstones and monuments put up to their service in the United States.
Well, and to your point, people think history is like dead and gone and a part of our past, but that's a perfect example of people working today. And the only way that they could accomplish that is if they understand and then practice and apply history. Because it's really not just about reading in a book. It's how are you going to use this information? Did you know that Dami is a Civil War reenactor?
Are you really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, 87th PA, Company C, historically out of York County, PA, Adams County, PA, and Cumberland County. Awesome. So I have ancestors that served in the 87th PA, and we're with the FEB, and we reenact. Usually we start with the St. Patrick's Day Parade in York, and we go until Remembrance Day in November. Because of COVID, they don't have the York St. Patrick's Day Parade anymore. So we're going to start with the Battle of Shiloh in
Oh,
April.
cool.
But yeah, I mean, York
And
County.
how's that been, like, reenacting? Like, do you face any challenges with that? Has it been, I'd really love to hear about that.
Just a really shortened season. A lot of events just can't happen because you can't have hundreds of people together in close quarters. It's been really hard because when you go to a reenactment, you're not being authentic if you're wearing a mask, you know. So like public health has been an issue, but it's also been like, do you want to run around in 90-degree weather in wool wearing a mask?
Yeah.
So it's been hard, but we're finally getting back to normal. And we have a full schedule this year. We have a website, so if people want to go check it out, it's just 87thpa.org. But you know, and we're always looking for new members. Women can be soldiers or civilians. You know, I try to be as authentic as possible. I put my hair up. You know, I'm not wearing makeup out there. I don't have jewelry on. And I'm actually like the same height and weight as like an average Civil War soldier because it would have been like a younger guy. Their stature was a little smaller back then, and if you wear enough layers, no one can tell that you're a female.
Sure.
My shtick, but yeah, no, it's been cool. And you saying about the international community that's interested in the Civil War, we actually were contacted by a group of Russian American Civil War reenactors that actually reenact as the 87th PA.
Really?
I felt like I was in like Inception. Something.
Yeah, seriously.
It was this really nice gentleman on the Russian version of Facebook that found our website, and he was like, "Comrade, I am in Russia," and it was really.
They didn't ask for your social security number.
No,
right?
no.
That's good.
He sent all of these photographs of them at their own reenactments that they're putting on themselves. There's no spectators. It's just a group of like-minded middle-aged men that are really interested in the American Civil War.
I love that.
So who knew? And there's also a big enclave in Germany of American Civil War reenactors.
I thought it was limited to just England. I didn't know that. It's a worldwide thing then. This is just completely worldwide.
Yeah, and I mean, we've been at one of our things that we love to do every summer is go to the PA Monument in Gettysburg, and we do a living history for 2 days. And we've met people from Japan and Ireland and England and like every country you can imagine, and they all talk about how much they love Abraham Lincoln and how much they love learning about the American Civil War.
That's cool.
But then you go to an American high school, and most kids can't even tell you what color uniforms the Confederates wore, or what was the Civil War about. And then you hear all of these people from other countries,
diehards.
Yeah, and you realize like how the ripple effect, how American politics and American war affected the entire world. So yeah, it's been a learning experience. You always learn something new when you're out Civil War reenacting, that's for sure.
Sure. And we have on, I guess on Facebook, the comments aren't posting like they normally do, but Darren Rollins, who is my co-host here on the Unfiltered, he says, it's great to have other enthusiastic young historians like us. And then 50,000 in reference to, I think, the veteran, is that the veterans that came over there, or is that just the interest level? Don't trust the Russians and UK.
I would like to say though that it was really, when he contacted me, he made a point to say that not all Russian people are political. He said like this is just a hobby. Yeah. So he wanted to remain as politically correct as possible. So
absolutely. I should have warned y'all about Darren, first of all. This guy, he's taught me a vocabulary. I call it my British vocabulary has been so expanded since knowing him. Like all these different things that we would call. He says aluminium for aluminum. Just a little side note there. I know that was a conversation starter
right
for
now as he's watching this.
He is watching. He's gonna probably comment really quickly back and remind me that it's aluminium in England and that we say it very weird. And I had to remind him that, hey, again, there's a reason we won that war so long ago that separated the two of us, okay? But that's the fun thing about having a co-host, like, and you guys are like close in proximity, so I have to deal with a guy all the way across the pond, which, I mean, he's my best friend. This guy has been incredible to help with this brand, so it's interesting having to work, miles and time zones apart, but we somehow make it work. And I'm sure you guys have it too. The banter, I think, is one thing I want to bring up. That is something that really makes these organizations awesome and fun for other people because we get to joke back and forth and just show there's just a real camaraderie in what we do, I believe, which helps with the hobby too. Because if this was a job, when we go in, we have coworkers we like, we have coworkers we don't like. It wouldn't be the same if it was a job where you had to sit there with all those coworkers and be like, here we're back alive again. But when I could turn around and be like, I'm taking your tea and throwing it in the Rappahannock next time I see you.
No, nice that we did have chemistry from the start, and we've made it a point that we pick topics that we're actually interested in, and we're friends in real life outside of our hobby. And that's been nice too, because it's like, okay, I have a friend, but I also have a colleague.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and one thing that Dami and I are trying to do through this is to show the other young women too that history is not just for men.
Right.
And also I think that in a lot of American culture, there isn't always a lot of positive female relationships.
Right.
And so we're trying to demonstrate that like we're not competing with each other. Like we just want to support one another and just be good role models for other women to see that they can break through this. I think there's still a glass ceiling with history. And so they can break through it. And so we're trying to role model that for them.
Yeah, Jamie's success doesn't take away from my success. And I mean, the more people that Jamie can get to view our videos and the more she teaches people, it's benefiting me in the long run, and vice versa. And we have different hobbies and we each bring something different to the table. You like to be more scripted.
Yeah.
I like to come in with like the random comments out of nowhere.
She's just super witty. And I'm like, that's not in the script. Like we have to follow the history part.
Yeah, I'm like, sorry. I have like a weird personal anecdote that I need to talk about, like milling in York County. But yeah, so we bounce off of each other really well. So, as long as we can keep it professional, but also casual, and that people can take a lesson away from it at the end of the day, I think we've been successful.
Well, and that's what's interesting. So people who are watching, if people are interested in starting like their own type of YouTube channel or mimicking what we're trying to do in some way to just try to extend history, we weren't necessarily friends first. Like first we found history and then we just kind of grew together. And so if people are watching and they're thinking, okay, who in my head, who can I partner with? Put yourself out there on Facebook. See if you can find someone in Russia to be your friend. Start your own channel with. It can be someone random.
International diplomacy.
That's what happened with me and Darren. I started out doing. I'm really almost embarrassed to say my name now, but I was Mr. Oculio for the longest time on Twitch and all these names. It was the worst name ever. But I did a program on one of the other Civil War pages about Gettysburg, and I partnered with Darren. And I haven't known him. I've seen him around maybe a few times, but I didn't know who he was really about him. And that video was it. Like, we fed off each other well, and immediately we're able to start joking, and then, but seriously, also like collaborating together in that same video without the prior, hey, this is my buddy. And it blossomed into a great friendship to where I was like, look, don't get a hotel. You can come stay with me for your week in Fredericksburg. Yeah. And we just, it's been amazing since. So I can completely understand that. You're right. It doesn't really start with who can I do this with? Because the last thing I had in my mind was who's going to be the person. I didn't expect to get this far. And Darren shows up on a video one day, and I don't want to say the rest is history because that's just one of the worst puns I could probably make tonight, but that's kind of how it happens. So, and I agree. That's really, I think, should be the focus. Don't try to seek out a partner. Just start it. Allow for the conversations to flow as they do, whether it be scripted or unfiltered. Just kind of roll with it and see how that goes. Test the waters a little bit. I mean, the cell phone wasn't made on the first try. It took probably 100 different times to make the first successful cell phone, or whatever it might be. I think that's the same with these, startup pages, like you guys were saying. It's a very serious trial and error phase that you have to go through. And I think we're still all going through that because, to perfect an art like this, it's difficult. And things happen. Technology fails us a lot. More than I'd like to say it actually does, but it does. And, that's kind of a thing to figure out. And you guys have that live aspect as well, which is incredible. And I haven't done that yet. So I have no idea what I'm getting myself into these next couple of weeks planning for this, but
we'll show up and heckle you from the back. So you feel more.
Oh Lord. Thank you.
45 minutes away from the Gary Owens. So.
Perfect. Yeah, no, that would be awesome.
The thing that people have to remember too is you're not going to make everyone happy all the time. We can't choose a topic that everyone is going to be interested in. And there's people who aren't going to watch us just because we're women or just because we're talking about York County history, and that's not what they're interested in. And the more viewers you get, the more opinions you're going to have and the different viewpoints. But that's a good thing, as long as people aren't being malicious with their comments.
Right. We haven't really found that.
No, people have been so nice and so welcoming, especially in the history community. But, criticisms, as long as it's constructive, is good because it's helping us be better historians and better people, honestly.
Absolutely.
We've gone back and adapted things and changed things because it's helping us grow.
Yeah, we're not perfect and we're never going to be perfect. And I think that's what I like about us the most is we're a little unpolished. We're just giving our honest opinions, and we're always learning something. So I'm sure like in a few years we can go back and we could redo some episodes and say, okay, like I've learned a lot about this topic since we did that video in season 1, and here's how I would update things and maybe say things in a different way.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a fair thing to say too. Cause I'm almost terrified to go back and watch these a few years later. I'm like, I'm gonna cringe at my own videos that I've done. Like, oh gosh, what did I say? But that's a cool thing. There's growth, I think, to see there, and that's another part of like that archival aspect that you said, that we get to have these videos to go back and learn from later. So we might be even teaching ourselves, without knowing it. We're making these videos now, and then 4 or 5 years down the road, we're like, oh, let me go look at this one that I did in 2022, or let me look at this video I did in 2021. Be like, wow, I did that. Like I was speaking about this, and now I'm talking about, it could be completely different. But I think that's what really makes these organizations great, is that we have that availability. We also have that outreach. And, I echo the same thing with the communities. We've had these great community outreaches so far. TikTok is a completely different animal, and I have had nothing but good things there. But and as many of the other organizations I work with too, we've had some weird experiences on TikTok. There's a very malicious community on the history side with TikTok, which is weird. So it's nice to come here and do these videos here.
For TikTok, I don't know. Like
I don't know. I just
got time for that more.
I tell people tread lightly with that one. Like, yes, the views are there, and it's cool to have that outreach, but good Lord, you get some weird comments from that place. And, I mean, to the point where I had one video go pretty serious up there in numbers, and I had to turn the comments off. I mean, just because A, the notifications, but B, it was just like, dude, what made you even think about that when you said that?
Yeah. So you're getting to an interesting point so you said about if you were to go back and watch videos of you in like 3, 5, 10 years. One thing that we try to stay away from when we're doing our videos is presentism, this idea of like taking our current day values and then judging in the past. Because like, for example, oh my gosh, like Teddy Roosevelt was one of my favorite presidents, right? He was
good.
Awesome. Baller, good answer, right? A+.
Well, Moose Party all the way. I love Teddy Roosevelt. Yeah.
He was known to be a womanizer, and that's wrong. I don't like that. Women couldn't vote, and I'm a feminist. I'll say it to anybody. I'm a hardcore. Women are equal.
She was a suffragette for Halloween.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I know. We should
cool deal.
But when for example, our third episode was called "People of the Golden Venture," and we looked at a group of Chinese refugees who came over to the United States, and they were imprisoned. For 4 years, 50 of them were in prison for 4 years with no legal counsel, with no representation. Mind you, this was in the 1990s. So it wasn't even that, right? It wasn't even that long ago. Yeah. And so that was kind of a dark.
Oh my gosh.
Our history. Yeah. I mean, Golden Venture, look it up. Of course, watch our YouTube video. We're on obviously YouTube. But this is a shining moment then of York, where they were kept in the justice system without justice, but then hundreds of York Countyans came together and held vigils every single Sunday, holding prayers and trying to raise money, and people really came together. And so we have these moments where we don't want to judge the past, but also like, that was wrong. Like they shouldn't have done that. And
learn from the past.
Right. And by bringing attention to it, we're almost like modern day muckrakers, we're trying not to elevate what we do. We're simply just making these videos. But by having just someone hold people accountable, and that if you do something that we're going to talk about it, we're hoping that it just keeps everybody a little bit more transparent in our community and honest as well.
And that's a topic that I never knew anything about the Golden Venture until Jamie brought it up and said, hey, we should do a video about it. So I completely learned everything about it that I could up until the video. And then even just filming our video, Jamie taught me a few things about it that I didn't know. And we actually met with the lawyer. He represented them, correct?
Yeah. Jeff Lobach and Cindy Lobach, his wife, was the masterminds, both of them behind the whole thing.
We filmed that episode in their basement.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So, being able to meet them and get that firsthand account of what actually happened on their side of the story was great.
No, I can only imagine. I mean, the 1990s was so not long ago at all. That is absolutely insane to even think about. I mean, I had no idea.
Yeah.
All right. So Darren responded. We got some more responses here. He said 50,000 British involved in the American Civil War.
Okay.
That's a significant amount of British involved in this war.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Then he threw a tea comment in there that I told you he was going to clap back at some point. And he had to bring up the air bed. Do you guys want to hear that quick story real quick about the air mattress?
Sure.
That, oh my gosh. So I live in a 2-bedroom apartment. You'd think I'd have another bedroom, but with a bed, but I didn't. And he came over. He's like, "So am I sleeping on a couch?" I was like, "That's the plan. I told you you're going to be rough." And he goes, "Nah, we're going to go get an air mattress." And so he just continuously rails me for not having this air mattress set up for him in this whole like elaborate bed plan. So we now have a permanent staple in my apartment. There's an air mattress. Anytime Darren flies in from the UK, he's got this air mattress we're gonna roll out, throw on the floor, and give him his own bed here. So I think I can't get by without him throwing that comment in there.
That's
But
great.
it
He's
is.
Who? Does he film with you sometimes?
He does. So we have a segment called the Unfiltered Conversations is what we do on Sunday, but it's normally just like the general topic of when we have folks on and we want to talk, because that's the whole thing about this page. But him and I are the one that start. We started it with Unfiltered Coffee. Just it was a jab at him for drinking tea. So I was like, hey, yeah, Unfiltered Coffee or Coffee and Conversations. We went through a different, just couple names jokingly. But Sundays normally him and I get together and he braves these late hours to stay up with me when it's only like 7 my time, where it's like, oh, it's not that late. I got to teach in the morning. But he's always like, mate, it's like 2 a.m. and I'm up talking.
Gosh.
And sometimes we just lose track of time and I'd be like, man, we've been on for 2.5 hours. And he's like, yeah, I know. I see the sun coming up and the birds are chirping. I'm like, oh man, I'm so sorry. But that's the thing. Like we just, we really don't script anything at all. We just get on like, what are we going to talk about today? He's like, I don't know, just press that live button and let's just start jabbing each other. I'm like, okay. And then that leads into some serious conversations. He just got back from Torrington, which is a battle I didn't know anything about till meeting Darren. 1646 English Civil War. Okay. They did some really cool stuff. I mean, they went marching through the entire town with torches and like reenacting by walking and marching and commemorating this really interesting battle where it was all culminated by the explosion of a church. And I mean, just stuff you wouldn't think about ever. And his friends doing live videos from a house that was built in 13 something. And I'm like, first of all, like somebody's living in a house from the 1300s. Like,
yeah, that's so cool. Yep.
Right. So it's cool to have that aspect and have a whole different segment of history that I virtually know nothing about.
Right.
And again, for us, we're like, okay, house in 1300s. To us, that's insane. To them, it's probably nothing. It's like, okay, I can check out this one from 1000. Like,
yeah, right.
Right. Like, I'm sorry that our oldest house is like 1607. I'm sorry that we have, just these few little 1600s thing. It's laughable to them, but at the same time, it's different. And it's a unique way to partner together and try to come to the same common ground of we're all trying to keep generations and generations of history alive. And there's so many different ways to do it. And I really like the fact that, one thing I found just different is bringing it to a conversational level. And I think you guys really have that as well, which is awesome to see. Is like, let's talk about it instead of just stand up, present the facts, call it a day.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
That's what our history teachers are for. Now, they're awesome too. Don't get me wrong. Like I teach in school too, right? So I completely understand. But at the same time, it takes, I think, a true passion in order for there to be a conversation and to have the banter and to have this, livelihood of just, I want to do this. I want to teach history. And I think I'm safe in saying this. We really love to be able to do this. Like, this is something that without the folks watching at home and commenting and, giving us that viewership and their ears, if you will, like we wouldn't be able to do this and we wouldn't be able to pull this off. So I think there really has to be that love for this in order for this to even happen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And that's what we find. And I think I call them kindred spirits. That's how, Darren is he's got the same idea, even though he's 1,000 miles away from me right now. Probably why. And again, if he's watching this now, I'm dude, you're brave. It's 8:11 our time. I could only imagine.
And I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Jim Mcclure and his relationship with us.
Yeah.
So
Please.
he was the editor for our local newspaper called the York Daily Record for a number of years, I think like 15 years. And he can correct me on Facebook if I'm wrong with that. But I reached out to him a number of years ago. I was writing my master's thesis on York County, and he has written a number of books on it. And so I reached out and said, hey, I'm writing my thesis. Can you help me? And he said, yep, come to my office. And he gave me his books and he was like, here. And all he wanted to do was just get someone else into it. And so he has really been like the wizard behind the curtain with us. Like he helps us. He by no means tells us what to do. And that's why he's a great leader, is that he kind of just shines lights on ideas. But he like mentorship, we can't stress that enough.
Right.
I mean, I don't even want to guess how old he is. He's retired. That's all I'm going to say. Okay. He's retired. But like he sees potential in us, and he's taking the time to say, here's some really cool stories. Here's how you can angle this. And he coaches us and he guides us, and there's no pressure. And so that's us now, because I'm in my 30s. Dami is going to be 30 in a few years. She's still a young bull over here. But if we can get like the teens and the 20s and just try to again pass on that knowledge, so Jim and I, we run this website called Witnessing York, and it is you can Google it, Witnessing York, and it's just about us writing about unsung heroes in York County, like average everyday people, and that's where Dami and I are hosting our videos. That's where we get a lot of our inspiration. Just stories that would have been glossed over, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. We're just bringing light to them, and I would have no idea if it wasn't for someone saying, like, here's this really cool topic. Let's go look at it. And I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, let's go look at it. So if, again, people who are watching, if you have young people in your life, even if it's nieces and nephews, and you can say like, hey, we're going to go to a history museum today, or maybe have our videos on in the background while you're cooking dinner. But, just try to introduce history in a fun, light way, and hopefully we can continue it.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And he's if you guys are watching on Facebook too, all those links are actually in the comments there on Facebook. Jim's been doing a great job of keeping up with that on there, so I really appreciate all those links, because now I have some reading material, because I was going to go through my little small town mob book tonight, but I'm seeing all these cool Witnessing York pages pop up. I'm like, ooh, I'm going to read that one. I have to read that one. He put the Golden Venture up too, so
cool. Jim is so involved with our local community, and he really is a champion for younger historians, younger journalists. He just wants the best for our area, and he wants people to know that if they're interested in learning more about the area or working to better the area, that he will support them, which I think is great. I mean, he introduced us. We would have never started this if Jim hadn't introduced us and said, hey, like, here's another young woman that's interested in the same things you are. I think a collaboration between the two of you would have been great, because I don't even think he had like a YouTube channel or a Facebook Live episode in mind when he introduced us. It was really organic, and it was just like, hey, maybe you guys could collaborate on a blog post or something, and then it evolved from there. So yeah, I mean, he really is sort of the mastermind behind everything.
And with that said, viewers, and same with you, Tyler, if you know someone that you can reach out to, people don't know how they can help. Right. And so if you just find someone that you, like an author or a professor or someone that's writing in the community, and you simply just send them a line or slide into the DMs. I hate that, but like just start
in a professional way.
Start a conversation. People want to help. They just don't know how.
Oh, no, absolutely. I don't know if you're familiar with Chris Mcclure or not, an author that writes for Emerging Civil War. If you guys may have heard of the Emerging Civil War blog, but Chris Mcclure's been a huge friend and mentor, as well as Terry Rensel from the Central Virginia Battlefield Trust. Now, Chris has written 15 plus books so far, I think, just on the Civil War in general, and started one of the greatest organizations for young historians. And that's been like one of the biggest inspirations. So, I enjoy very much having conversations with him and just hearing how he's been able to bring this alive and creates an organization, a national organization like the Emerging Civil War. So, of course, I mentioned to you guys that I started out strictly Civil War. And of course, I kind of find myself gravitating back to that, because living in Fredericksburg, I hype the Fredericksburg battle up so much, but there's actually 4 battles that take place here, which collectively makes up the bloodiest landscape in North America. So it's really tough to kind of narrow in and focus on just one battle in particular and really just hone in on that. So it's been amazing to have a friend like Chris, and it's very similar to Jim. He's been, and Noel Harrison too. He is a good God. Is he a treasure trove of knowledge? I mean, he'll watch some of our videos. He'll be like, I was watching your Prospect Hill video, and here's the location of, such and such. And there was a British warship that happened to be docked off this place in 1780. And he would just bring all these things. And, to have folks that have charted these paths before us that know so much, it's a huge appreciation to have them even be willing to share this information that, I couldn't generally find on a good day. And then it's just freely shared like that. You're right. We got to tip our hats to these people, because they teach us so much. And I'm only 27 years old. I'm learning so much still as we go.
Right.
So no, I agree. There's definitely, to all these folks watching, reach out in your local areas to these people. You guys brought up such a good thing. I think that's one thing I've never actually really highlighted on this page. So I really appreciate y'all bringing that, aspect of the history field here, because that is it. Networking's a huge thing. Mm-hmm. And look at the people who came before us that really helped us be what we are today, and what we might be one day.
And that's and I'm sure you have done this already in our 45-minute conversation here, but every video that we shoot, we use a local history text, like a book that someone wrote. So for example, in season 2, episode 1, we filmed an episode called All in One Room. These small schools taught big lessons in one-room schoolhouses. And we used a book that a local journalist wrote, and she compiled all these different books. We named it after, it's All in One Room. Her name is Joan Cancello, and she just compiled the stories. But you can go buy that on Amazon. And so I like that, to your point earlier, we don't work in a vacuum. Reach out and talk with other people and collaborate. I mean, thank you, Tyler, for reaching out to us tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I was watching your videos on Facebook, and I was like, oh, here's like another young person in the same field as we are. And then the tattooed historian is the one that introduced me to you. So there's another person. And I know him through Civil War reenacting and World War II reenacting. So, there are so many different people that you can meet and collaborate with and learn from. And again, it comes back to, you're not in competition. There's always something to learn, and promoting someone else's book, promoting someone else's YouTube channel is not taking away from any success that you could gain from your book or your interview.
And sharing stuff. Like, one of the reasons why Dami's Facebook page got so popular is that she is a channel where she just posts other people's stuff all the time.
That's awesome.
Connector.
Yeah, I try and highlight local businesses every day. I try and promote local events. Anytime there's anything going on with local history, obviously, because it's a history-centered page, that's what I like to focus on. But even just people sharing stories, family history stories, because so many people in town are related to each other.
And watch out.
We're all cousins in some way. But it's been a great way for the community to connect. So it went from just being preserving the history of Newberrytown to sort of just preserving history, or just preserving Newberrytown in itself.
Right. And that's what I love about it. And I've watched a lot of what you guys had, and that's what I said. It's just, there's no competition. And that's been a thing, I think, that has plagued the history field for so long. And it's not one to point blame at any organization or anything of that matter, but it is a thread that I have seen just pulled so tightly at sometimes, is where there is a competition going on. And the fact that the younger generation, instead of being competitive, has just been about, let's make this a communal effort. That needs to change, because again, gatekeeper was the word that Tattooed Historian and I have thrown around a lot. But I mean, we've witnessed that, and we've experienced that type of history before from the historians that we may have really idolized growing up, and then realized that they don't want anybody else to do what they do.
Right.
Well, I'll tell you what, I would love to have as many people on here talking history. That just shows us a community of like-minded folks that want to see the same common goal. What is wrong with that?
And with Jim being so successful in his career, especially when it comes to local journalism and local history, he could have said, well, I've written everything there is to write about York County. Why would I want to mentor these young women and have them, highlight these stories and come up with their own, information about it? But he's been so nice, and he's like, no, please draw from the things that I've written.
Right.
And, he has so many connections in the community that he could have kept that all to himself, had the monopoly on the York County history scene, but he saw something in us and was like, no, I want to share that, and I want it to extend to other generations. So that's been really helpful to us.
That is awesome. Well, guys, do you have anything else you'd like to add? I know we're nearing our hour mark, and I mean, I just been so much enjoying this conversation, and it's really cool because, like I said, most of the folks I interview are authors, or just things that are like very specific. So this has been the first time I'm able to get another history organization on here and just talk about our common goals here. But do you have anything in specific?
Do you mind if we show you our YouTube channel quick?
Oh, I was hoping we'd do that soon. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because that's where the magic happens.
YouTube, that's right. I see. I haven't had luck on YouTube whatsoever, which is okay. But
it's interesting, because I think what happens is we're such a small town that it's hard. We do get good views on live, but then there's a lot of people that say, I'm not available at 7:00 on a Thursday. When can I rewatch it? And we say, go to our YouTube channel.
There you go.
So our like secondary views are what we're getting.
So we have these 2 different playlists. We've got our season 1 and season 2, and these are just some odd videos that we made to go along with Witnessing New York, because we're finding that people still like to read, but we really like to consume information by watching people. And so if you visit our website then and scroll down, you can see that we've got all these videos to watch, 6 episodes in season 1, and we have started season 2. We've already filmed our first one, and they range in length. We started out with like 15 minutes, and then we were getting to more like 20 and 36, because as your point, people are coming out to see us live. They don't want to drive 45 minutes to then have the conversation be over in 20 minutes. But we're also trying to film these also smaller videos to hit more of the younger audience or people who are just flipping through. So please go watch more and share what we do. And
leave comments, because we've noticed too that people get hesitant about commenting on our live videos or even commenting on our YouTube videos. But like I said before, constructive criticism is good, and it is always nice to hear that you're doing a good job. So if you want to leave a compliment, please do. If we're doing something good, tell us. If there's something we can work on, we want to hear that too. Or if there's just a topic that we haven't covered. We like to stay local to the York County area, but there's such a rich history in York County from the beginning of America till now. So really, we're okay with covering present day history, or even something that happened back in like the Revolutionary War.
And our next episode then is this Friday. It's called Stitching Secret Messages. We're looking at the textile industry, specifically how women used the fabric arts to gain independence, autonomy, and support each other.
And we're going to be filming that live. Now, we're not going to have an audience this time. We're just going to film it for Facebook, because the place that we're filming is a smaller area. But it's called the Redstone Glen Fiber Arts Center, and it's local to Newbury Township. It's in I think it's a York Haven address, but I'm not going to get into the geographics because it's confusing. We have our own little weird things going on in Newbury Town with addresses. But what they are is it's a weaving school. And if you know anything about the Knisley family, they're like the rock stars of the weaving world, which you wouldn't really think the weaving world has rock stars, but they do. And
something new again.
They actually have these classes that they teach where people from all over the world, from all over the country come, and they can actually board there at the school for days, weeks at a time, and learn how to weave. They have book clubs that they talk about, all kinds of different fiber arts. And Sarah, the woman that runs it, Sarah Knisley, she actually has artifacts in like the weaving world and weaving history. So we're going to hope to, highlight some of those things that she's found. And her father has written books about weaving, and especially like in York County. So, we can learn a lot just from being in that space. So we're really looking forward to that episode.
No, that sounds incredible. I'm looking forward to tuning into that, because I have actually found no idea what I was going to be doing Friday. So now I know.
You're going to be learning about textile arts and women in York County.
You are a history nerd, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. If I find something awesome in history, I'm like, there we go, because I need to find something to do. I'm reading. I have a stack of books over here next to me that's almost as tall as I am, and I'm 6'3". So if there's a stack of books that is that tall, that's
Cool.
It's a sizable.
I'm a librarian, so that makes my heart happy.
Oh yeah, no, I tell you, some of my favorite people at the high school I teach at are in that library. That is one of the coolest places to go. And we have lucky to have a connection with the local Civil War field in our library. Unfortunately, I've noticed a trend that a lot of the students don't check out the books, because we were donated some of these books in the 90s that haven't been opened at all.
Oh.
So
you need to have candy in it.
That's what I was really. Hey, there's a scavenger hunt. If you guys go to this specific section over here.
I work in a federal library, and it's a law library, and I even have candy for the law clerks. It's if offer rules, they use the library more. So
that's awesome.
But I do want to give a quick shout out to Karen Hostetter at the Redland Community Library. She's been really great with making sure that we get the resources that we need. And she's even set up a little book corner in the library where it corresponds to the episode that we're filming that week.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so when we did like all in one room, the schoolhouse episode, she had books about one room schoolhouses. When we did about the Baptist farm and the Underground Railroad, she made sure that she highlighted local York County authors that wrote about the Underground Railroad in York County and Pennsylvania. So that's been a really great resource to us. And again, it's making those local connections. And I have to say that we just launched a merchandise page on Spring Tea.
Awesome.
She's our model tonight.
Here's the t-shirt for like $30.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, because this is a hobby and we're not making money off of it. So any money that we make through selling our merchandise goes right back into preserving history.
Equipment.
Yeah, and sometimes, so far we've been able to use spaces for free, but there are, I'm sure in the future, going to be times that if we want to film somewhere, they're going to want to charge us a fee, or you know, like if a cell phone breaks down or a laptop breaks down, that's how we're filming things. We don't have professional equipment. So this is really just like a homegrown hobby. So it does take money out of our own pockets. So this is not like a get rich quick scheme. You know, if you do rock a hat or a t-shirt or like a sticker from the Hometown History merch, you're really just, you know, funding making us more videos. And
you guys have ball caps too?
No, I'm sorry. They make bucket hats, which apparently is like what the kids are into these days. But
bucket hat works for me. It's gonna keep the sun out of my face in the summer. I'll take it. Yeah, there you go.
I like ball caps. I usually wear ball caps. I only wear my hair down for these videos. Usually it's under the hat. But
that's been my trademark. Apparently, I make a joke. My daughter doesn't recognize me without a hat on because I haven't seen her. Yeah,
never shave your facial hair because my dad shaved once in my entire life, and it was the scariest moment.
Are you a never knew? You always have your hat on.
Never knew.
Always. I have to. I don't know. It was my dad who did it to me because I always grew up. He either had a Virginia Tech hat on or a Baltimore Orioles hat on. So I guess I just kind of followed in the footsteps. Now I know my little girl's gonna follow in the footsteps because every time I go see her, she takes the hat off and puts it on backwards. I'm just like, that's see.
She wants to be like dad.
Yeah, she does. It's awesome. So I mean, that's the thing. The bucket hat works as long as there's a hat on my head. It's just
making a ball cap was like an extra $5 because it has to be embroidered and like.
Oh yeah.
We're not at that level yet.
No.
$5 is like.
When I can start paying an extra $5 to get embroidered hats, then I know we've made it. But
I'm telling you, even the Unfiltered hasn't gotten that far yet. We're like, we can't even get a ball cap. Like, I mean, that's the day. I can't wait to finally snap that Unfiltered ball cap on, but we'll get there eventually.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for having us on. Yeah,
this has been amazing, and thank you. And you know, hopefully your viewers, you know, give us a shout out or something, and come see our YouTube channel.
No, absolutely, and I'll make sure I share this on the Unfiltered page. That way, it's again just cross everywhere, because everybody can see it. And if you guys are watching, please do give these guys a like and a follow. And y'all should tune in Friday too, because we're not streaming. We're gonna all be watching this, so I definitely look forward to seeing what you guys have Friday. And if there's any time you guys want to come chat, you're always welcome on the Unfiltered. We love having you, and we love the support. So, yeah, thank you guys so much for joining, and everybody that watching at home, thank you so much. We will see you guys on the next one.
Yeah,
thank you.